fourth grade. Today we're going to talk about equivalent fractions and decimals, lesson 9.3, and we're going to go through your workbook page P159. Okay, let's get started. Let me share this screen. There we go. Okay, so it says write the number as hundredths in fraction form and decimal form. Okay. All right, so here's what they did. They said that 5/10 was actually 50 hundredths. And the reason for that is if you are going to turn tenths into hundredths, and we know how to make equivalent fractions by multiplying by the same number, top and bottom, you would multiply by 10 and you would get 50 hundredths. Okay, so that's how you write it as a fraction, and that's how you write it as a decimal. Remember, 2 digits after the right of the decimal. Okay, let's look at these. All right, 9/10. So we're going to turn 9/10 into hundredths. All righty, let me do some annotating here. I'm going to do some drawing here. Okay, so in order to make equivalent fractions, you can multiply by the same number, and we're going to turn tenths into hundredths. And how would I turn tenths into hundredths? Just multiply by 10, right? Whatever you do on the bottom, the denominator, you do to the numerator. 9 times 10 is 90. Okay, so now we have 90 hundredths. So that was the first thing we were supposed to do. And the other thing we need to do is just turn it into a decimal. Easy peasy, right? Okay, I don't have any holes. My decimal, sorry. Hard to make decimals here. Okay, and that's a decimal. Okay, and then this is a 90. So you just say, you read the two numbers together and you call them hundredths. 90 hundredths, okay? All right, let's look at this one. Well, this one's already a decimal. We need to turn it into a fraction and a decimal. Okay, so when I read this, I see that there's 0 holes and there's 2 tenths. So all I have to say is 2 tenths. So I know that that's 2 tenths right there. But they want me to turn it into hundredths, right? Okay, so I would just multiply by 10. Multiply by 10. Multiply by 10. And then I'm going to get 20 hundredths. Oops. Okay. 20 hundredths right there. And then they want a decimal too. So I'm just going to write 20 hundredths. There we go. Okay. All right. Do you notice a little pattern yet? When you multiply by 10, what are you actually doing? Change the color here. What are you actually doing when you multiply by 10? Look at that. Look at this one. There's the original 2 tenths, right? All you're doing is adding a 0. That's all you're doing to make hundredths, really. Okay. All right, let's look at 8/10. That's 8/10 because there's only one number after the decimal, so that means tenths, okay? So I got 8/10. So I need to turn it into a fraction with hundredths and a decimal with hundredths. So 8/10 is actually this, right? 8/10. Okay, and if I multiply the top and the bottom by 10, I would get 80 tenths. Oops. 80 hundredths, sorry, 80 hundredths. Thank you. Multiply the top and the bottom, you'd get 80 hundredths. You're just adding a 0 at the end. Okay, and then you just write it as a decimal. There we go. There we go. 8. Okay, 80 tenths. All right, so you have that. I'm going to clear all drawing. Okay, then I'm going to go back to mouse. Do all these together. No, I'll do this. Okay. Write the number as tenths in fraction form and decimal form. Now we have to write it as tenths. So we have hundredths, and now we have to write it as tenths. Okay, let's see. So I need to turn hundredths into tenths. Oh, let me go back to my drawing. There we go. I want to change the color. Let's make it brown. Okay, so I need to turn hundredths into tenths. Okay, well, I can't multiply 100 to 10. I can't multiply. Whenever you're going from bigger to smaller, you can divide. Could I divide by 10? Yeah. So 100 divided by, oops, hard to make little dots. 100 divided by 10. That's my divided sign, okay. And then 40, okay. 40 divided by 10. 100 divided by 10 is 10. 40 divided by 10 is 4. So from 40 hundredths, I get 4 tenths. Okay. So I need to write it as a fraction and a decimal. Okay, so here it is. 4 tenths is my fraction. And to write it as a decimal, that's pretty easy peasy. How many holes? So 4 tenths. There we go. Okay, now let's look at 10 hundredths. I need to turn hundredths into tenths. Okay, remember you divide. And what can I divide? 100 divided by, dividing signs, okay. Uh-oh, okay. All right, so 100 divided by 10, and 10 divided by 10. Okay, so 100 divided by 10 is 10. 10 divided by 10 is 1. Okay, so there's my fraction. I'm not going to write it again. You know, that's it. Okay, my fraction goes down here. And if I'm going to write it in decimal form, tenths are right after the decimal. There we go, 1/10. Okay, all right, do you notice a pattern? When I create tenths from hundredths, what am I doing? Look at this. I just take off the extra 0, right? That's all you do, okay? All right, so let's go back to my color. All right, so 60 hundredths. How do I know this is 60 hundredths? Because there's 2 digits, okay? 2 digits after the decimal point, 60 hundredths. All right, so that's, I need to turn them into tenths though. I need to turn it into a fraction and I need to turn it into a decimal. Okay. Well, sometimes it's easier to do it in a fraction first. Okay. And then I need to turn it into tenths. So I'm just literally, guys, if I divide by 10, I'm gonna just get rid of those, right? Divide by 10, blob off the 0. All right, so in fraction form, it's 6 tenths. And then in decimal form, it would be 6 tenths. Okay, sounds good, right? Easy peasy. All right, let's go to the next one. Let's clear this. and move up. Okay, back to drawing. All right, Billy walks 6/10 of a mile to school each day. Write 6/10 as hundredths in fraction form and in decimal form. Okay, so if I have 6/10 and I need to turn it into hundredths, how many hundredths would 6/10 be? Basically, guys, you're multiplying by 10 because 10 times 10 is 100. 6 times 10 is 60. You're just putting another 0 at the end. That's all you're doing. Okay, so I wrote it as a fraction. Now they want me to write it as a decimal. Okay, that's pretty easy peasy. There we go. All right. All right, 4 states have names that begin with the letter A. This represents 8, what? 8/10 or 8/100? 8/100 because I have 2 digits here, okay? 8/100 of all the states. Write 8/100 as a fraction. Oh, that's easy. 8/100. I just want to make sure you know what that number is, basically. Okay? Easy peasy. All right, now I'm going to show you something else. See if I can get out of here. Nope. Okay. Oh, we stopped sharing. Okay. All right, I wanted to share something else with you. Here we go. Okay, so this is a special request from Paige, actually. This is page 369, number 14 through 16. It's your textbook. Write the number as an equivalent mixed number with hundredths. Okay, so here's the thing. It's kind of like exactly what we did, only there's a whole number here. So the whole numbers are going to stay the same. It's your fractions that are going to become hundredths, okay? So this would be, we take our 4/10. Oops. Oh, I see the problem. They don't let me annotate it. Okay. Here we go. We take our 4/10. Sorry. 4/10. Right? And we just multiply it by 100, right? No, sorry, multiply it by 10 to get hundredths. Now I have 40 hundredths. Okay, and the 1 stays the same. So the answer is 1 and 40 hundredths. So 1 and 4/10, 1 and 40 hundredths. Okay, if you're going to write that as a decimal, you would just do this. 1 and 40 hundredths. Okay, all right, same thing. 3 and 5/10. Well, just turn your 5/10 into hundredths. Add an extra 0, basically, guys. Seriously, that's all you need to do. The answer is 3 and 50 hundredths. Okay? If you wanted to write it as a decimal, which they don't ask for, but that's what that is. 3 and 50 hundredths. So 50 hundredths is the same as 5/10, actually, because if you had one of those flats, oops, you had one of those flats and you separated it into 5 pieces, okay, and then you colored that in half of it for 5/10. If you were to separate these into hundredths, you know, it's cut up some more. You know, it's the same thing. That would be 50 hundredths. There'd be more here too, right? Okay. I don't want to draw the whole thing, but you know what I mean. So 5/10 is like half, 50 hundredths is half. Same thing, okay? All right, so same thing here. It says write the number as an equivalent mixed number with hundredths. So the 2 stays the same. Just add an extra